And the speaker is the founder of Data Lab LLC, Richard Garanch. Nice to see you at the bootcamp again, Richard.
Yeah, thanks. So hello everyone. Today this will be a bit technical session indeed. But before I will start on my topic, I just want to show you before what is the end result, so that you can maybe be interested in whether actually it's worth of a try. So I'll start. I'll start by sharing my screen, and then I'll share. So I'll start by sharing one example app, and just what I would like to show you with this is simply how you can use DAX to make any visual that will be very dynamic based on whatever selection you have. So the first thing here, you can see this is just a sample report with sample data. And what I can do here is I can select which value I would like to see on my chart. For example, this time it shows me volume, but if I would click on value, I just have to click on it and then it will automatically update me with a completely different result. Or if I would click on price, which is not aggregated number, it still would show me that number. Or distribution, just any number that I would like to click on, it will work. And the same thing, what I can do is I can change, for example, its time frame, for example, from month to date to year to date. I can go and change that, the numbers will automatically change. If I want, I can also update the scale, or for example, I can also check whether these are absolute numbers, or maybe I would like to look at the result versus last month. And once I click on that, all of the numbers will automatically re-update. And then on top of that, I can also change whatever is shown on my axis or legend just by clicking some elements. For example, from back tab, I could select segments, and the results would be readjusted based on segments, for example, or size groups. So it's a very dynamic tool. And by the way, you can see also that all the time my header also changes based on those changes. And the best part of it, you can achieve that with a simple set of formula. And once you update that, like once you create and understand that formula, you can actually create such very dynamic, very intuitive reports. I mean, this is just one example. This is just one chart. You can imagine if you could also do cross filtering there. And the idea how you would approach this is just you need to know the sequence of steps, what you need to do. By the way, this is if you want to see this report, you can also download that. I created this as available for downloading, so you can even download that from this community.power.bi. Just write dynamic everything, and then you'll find this report. And you can also see I've given down the formulas, but I'll also show you them through the presentation. Now, if I will go through my presentation. So the idea how you can create these dynamic values is through 5 steps. And the 5 steps that you need to do is, first of all, you have to figure out yourself what are the KPIs that you would like to do. So in my case, these were just 4, which was this volume, value, price, and distribution. And you just create empty table with those values. You just write them down. This is, for example, my header would be KPI. I would have these 4 values as just entered data, empty table. That's not linked to anything. Then the second thing that you need to do, you need to start to create a slicer from those 4 values. So you just drop in this one column that you've created and make that as a slicer so that you can actually select them. The third thing is what you need to do is whenever you have these measures that you have intended to do, you need to create your own measures. So for example, if it's volume, then it might be just as simple as sum, like the volume column from your master table that you have. If it's price or distribution, it might be, or anything else, you just need to update these formulas. And then the last thing, which is not the last thing, but the fourth thing that is the most difficult part, is to write this function, how to write that function. But once you understand the logic of that function, then it's actually very simple for you to actually follow that function, understand this. So the way it's written is with switch and selected value. So switch, for those who do not know this, it's like a cascaded if. So instead of writing if this measures something and then if next measures something, I just write switch, and that will trigger these multiple ifs. So if one thing, then the other thing else, if else. So that will be the first part. And the second part is the selected value. So, and what the selected value does, it just retrieves the selected slicer value that you have given. So for example, I would write selected value, and then I would select this column from the slicer that I've created just now. So for example, even though it's not connected to any of my database and any of my data model, I just simply, if I click volume, then it will just retrieve the value that it's volume that's being selected, or price, then it's going to retrieve me price back again. So then it's just the selected value. What I can do as well, if you know the selected value function, then you can also use this alternative result. And what alternative result means is if I select do not select any value, or if I selected more than one value, then what would be my alternative result? So you can do it either way. You can either say that this is wrong. You can write that this is please select one value, or you can take a default value. Let's say volume would be my default value. And lastly, what you need to do, you need to put in quotation marks the name of the first slicer that you've selected. For example, volume, you just put that in quotation marks. And then you select that measure that you've written previously for that measure, for example, this volume, and then value and so forth. And once you've done this formula, so you can add as many steps as you like, and you will see that you will always, if you look at the DAX formatting formula, you will see that it's going to be the red part, which is the string value, and then this purplish part with the measure, and then every time you will write that down. And at the very end, you can also add this default measure as well if no slicer is selected. So this is how the formula looks like. You can see in the presentation. And once you've done that, so I usually call that as dynamic value, and then you can add that in your visualizations in your value field, and you will see how it actually will change the whatever value you've selected with this function. And I think what is good about it is, first of all, you can combine multiple reports into one page. So let's say if you want to show something on volumes, and somebody asks you to, okay, what is with value happening? And instead of you need to create the same report that's duplicating the volume or value, or you need to drop out volume and then drop in value field, you just can click that for the slicer. So that's much more easier for the user and much better for you as a report creator, because you can create multiple visuals with just one simple custom column chart. And it's very simple. And the thing is that what you can do is you can also go even more advanced with this dynamic value, and you can create these cascaded measures to leverage functionality. And how it's done is simply, let's say I would like to use this new dynamic value, but I would like to show that I would like to add time intelligence behind it. So let's say I would like to show maybe month to date, then year to date, then rolling 12 months, full 12 years, quarter to date, what have you. And what normally people do is, you would write month to date for volume, then year to date for volume, then you have to do the same thing month to date for value, and then year to date for value. So, and then when you do these multiple measures that you want to create, you start having these multiple measures in your data model. That's first of all, very difficult to maintain if something goes wrong. And secondly, it's difficult for the user, especially if you want to create a new report. Okay, I need to remember all of them. Plus, it takes time for you to write these different measures. But what you can do with this, you can leverage the scale of it. So instead of writing month to date for volume and then for value, you can write this month to date for this dynamic value that you created in the first step. And the good thing is about it, when you create this dynamic value, then you can assign whether it's volume or value or price or distribution based on the slicer that you've selected. And in this way, you can leverage cascade it to multiple levels. Like I showed you in this example, so I had the selection of the values, then the time intelligence. I was able to select versus last month, last year, quarter, what have you, and scale, whether it's in thousands or millions or absolute numbers. So you could put these multiple layers on that formulas. And once you put these multiple layers, I usually denote them by step 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I can know, okay, which step in which step it uses which function. But the good thing is about it that you can have a couple of formulas that are very, very powerful for you, and you don't have to write many formulas to actually achieve any result that you would like to see in your reports. And one real example that I can give you, when I was doing consultancy, there was one company that had 270 measures, I think, in total, so of their data models. So that was, and then they said, it doesn't work, so they need fixing it. So instead, so for me to take, I think, 3 days to actually understand, okay, what each measure means and how they interact with each other. But instead, what we did is simply we use this approach. So we created this dynamic value, and then you do these cascaded steps. So instead of these 270, we had roughly 9 measures. So you can imagine it's more than it's an insane increase of functionality. The good thing about it is that you also saw the performance is also very great when you create this. I mean, unless you go way overboard, but usually the performance still holds very nicely. And if you want to do these advanced values, so it's once again the same principle. So you create these same 5 steps, but the only difference is that your measure now becomes a bit more difficult, but what it will need, it will refer to this dynamic value all the time. So for example, if you see this logic on month to date, year to date, or quarter to date, so once again, I use this switch, then selected value. Then I would select this time intelligence column that I created, for example, with these 3 values, month to date, year to date, or quarter to date. And then I just write the formula. So in this time, this my total month date refers to dynamic instead of volume or value or price separately. Now, and you can create this very flexible measures that are just controlled only with slicers. As you saw that I had a couple of slicers which user can control and select whatever data you would like to see. So I hope that this can help you in creating very powerful visualizations, and then you can manage your own measures, how much measures you need to create. That actually leverages your efficiency very a lot. Now, going next thing is the dynamic title. And what I mean by dynamic title is, especially when you start creating these measures or that are multiple selection fields, or in general, if you would like to show you have certain report, what people actually usually do, they try to see, okay, what I've selected, maybe, did I select the right numbers, or, I would just like to know, okay, what I'm seeing right now. What you can do, you can create these dynamic titles, and then you can make sure people see what they see. Whenever they actually select any filter or they do cross highlighting or cross filtering, it will automatically show them what is there. And also it helps you to avoid a lot of these, questions that, okay, my data is wrong, but okay, you have selected this one specific filter or you have cross highlighted this value. That's why you see different results. So this one will help you, especially if they do print screen of the Power BI reports. The title will always be there, so that there will be no mistake when they see what is the data. So for this, I usually use this var function, so it's variable function. This helps me to write variables, and usually this is the best practice how you would write DAX formula with using this variable. And once again, as you see here, that I'm using the same selected value function or the feature. And the alternative result is, for example, if more than one value is selected, what you can do, you can add these multiple elements. So for example, if I select company name, so if I select any of my competitor companies, then it will show me this competitor. But if I select all of them, then I can write here total market in there. So then I will see this volume, this total market, if I've not selected any of the companies. You can do the same thing for brands or anything else like that. And once you do this, you create these different selected values. Like you can see here below, I have this first part, which is the selected value company name. Then I would select brand name, time frame maybe, and I could add multiple parts as I go. Using this variable, then I write the name of the whatever I selected. It could have been just here the company, here would be brand, and so forth. And once I do that, I actually forgot to here write return. You need to write return before. When you finish variables, you need to write return. And then what I do, I usually write it with trim. Why do I write it with trim? Simply because if I have not selected some of these values, I will not have these multiple spacebars between different values. And the way it works is simply you just write trim, and you have part 1, and then you concatenate with, or you can write concatenate, or just with this end, and then in quotation marks you add spacebar. You combine these multiple parts. And what happens when you do this? You will have and then also you can, what I forgot, you can also write some specific already fixed text. For example, I would know this is sales market data for, and then you write these dynamic parts, which is just for either total market or any company and so forth. When you do this, it's a very simple formula.
Yeah, Richard, sorry, you wanted to show us these formulas, or do you have a PowerPoint slide to show us?
Yeah, I think, am I not showing my PowerPoint? Then it's, sorry.
Then, yes, and share. PowerPoint, and then I'll.
Yes, maybe then it's. I'm very sorry. I will share my PowerPoint. This was what I was talking about. So I was always showing my presentation. Sorry, but the whole idea is that this is how it's written. So you have your variable, then your whatever your part name is, it's company, brand, or what have you. You just write here the selected value. Then, for example, this column company name, which is the column that you've selected, the string. You have your alternative result. You write return, and then you just write trim, and then you add these. Once you do that, what happens is that your just the header will be dynamic. And you know this all the things that I'm showing you here, they will be available in this report that I'll share the link for you, so you can actually download that Power BI report and you can have a look at them. So it's also very simple in the way it's built, and you will see both the advanced DAX part, which is this cascaded part, and also this dynamic title. You will see them, and you can have a copy of those. And the final thing that that I would like to show you is this format function. So once again, it's the same thing about this dynamic fields. What happens is sometimes I have, let's say I have volume, value, then price, and sometimes I would have something in percentages, for example, like profit margin. And you know, normally I would like to show that this is in percentage in my report as well. So I would like to see that it shows me percentages instead of 0.05. So what you can do with this, you can add this format function, and this format function allows you to show your KPIs in their respective format. So, for example, what I usually do is when I created all of my how to say measure that I want, in the final measure, I just simply create formatting based on whether these are percentages or just a decimal number with 2 decimals behind comma, or regular number that shows something in thousands, maybe in millions. It depends on what you have. Just remember, when you create your format function, it will become a string. So it will show you the numbers correctly, it will calculate these numbers correctly, but this is the last measure that you can use. You will not be able to refer back to this format measure to do something else. For example, you will not be able to divide this format by 100, for example, because it will convert that as a string. So just make sure that this is the last that you create. Actually, once you use that, once you understand how you use this in this format, it's actually very powerful for you to create multiple type of measures in the same report. So you can select these profit margins, or absolute profit, or profit per unit. So all of these will be available, and people will see their respective numbers like they would do. And you can imagine this format function as calculate this conditional formatting in Excel, where you conditionally format numbers based on whatever the data is selected. So it's the same logic here. So you can use that, and you can also go to this this directory where you can see how different format functions you can write. You can write by default, for example, percentage, and it will show you these percentages. You can also create your own custom formatting as you wish. And the last thing that I would like to show you is, what you have to do if you have unanswered questions, or if you're stuck. So there, I will give you a couple of go-to places, which I use quite often if I have some trouble. And this is my go-to place. The first place that I usually go to is this communitypowerbi.com, and where I can just write my own problem there. And in 99% of the cases, this problem has already been posed by other people, and in the same 99% of the cases, it's already been solved. So instead of me thinking, okay, what is the problem, and thinking out my head, I can just write that down, and it will automatically give me this result. The second part where you can learn a lot of great features is Guy in a Cube. So this is a YouTube channel where they show you, so there are 2 guys who show a lot of cool features that are available in Power BI. Some of them I've been inspired by some of these features that they've created. And this is just a very good way how you can actually elevate your skills in not only in DAX, but also in just visualizations in Power BI. Then there's also this Power BI official YouTube channel. They also sometimes add in a lot of famous people in the Power BI scene, where they actually show the best practices. They can also do presentations. Then the next two are very much specifically geared toward advanced DAX. So one of them is the Straticat.com, and the second one is Alberto Ferrari. So they are very, very good in both SQL and DAX in general. And if you want to see the latest curated content, from Power BI, so for example, latest updates, the pipelines, some great examples, best-in-class examples, then you can find Mark Rivera, who's the Power BI Enterprise Lead in Microsoft, in LinkedIn. And I follow him, so usually that I could see all the latest features that are available in Power BI, and I can always be up to date with Power BI functionalities, its abilities, and then you can always improve yourself this way. So that will be about it from my side. I will add in this link that you can have a look, and you can download this Power BI file itself. So hopefully that can help you, and I hope that this will help you to create much better, much more dynamic, clearer, and better maintained reports in the future.
All right, thank you for the presentation. I believe that I can speak on behalf of most of the attendees that it's been a while, Richard, since we saw something like this, so technical. But great, this is a great part of the bootcamp. Good news is that Richard is not leaving us today yet. So he has the second session as well after the coffee break. So Richard, meanwhile, will put on the links in the Q&A, so you can use the break to get something. Play around and ask Richard's question at the next session, but we're not in the coffee break yet. We have a few questions, Richard. Yeah. First one, to warm up, what's your favorite DAX function?
I think calculate is just a very versatile function, but that's mainstream function. So for me, it would be this combination of switch selected value. This is I've used in every single report that I create.
But I think it would be useful for everybody if you talked a bit slower.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So it's combination of switch and selected value. So these two combination of these two functions, they do magic.
Okay. So switch and selected value, and then the follow-up question is that could you suggest what would be some of the most useful advanced DAX functions that are worth to master? If you mentioned that your favorite might be simple, then what are the favorite most advanced?
Okay. Well, the thing is with DAX is that you can, just like an Excel formula, so you can achieve the same result using multiple ways. And there are some complex DAX functions or complex combinations of DAX functions that you can use. But for me, the beauty lies in the simplicity, that you can use simple functions that actually can do wonders for you. There are a few functions that I did not mention that are, on par with advanced level. They're not that advanced. But for one of them is, for example, all of these, for example, sum x, average x, rank x. So these functions are a bit more advanced because you need to understand the filter context. But what they do, they allow you to sum between the rows. So it's not like a model type of way, but it has this row context. But for me to explain this raw context versus filter context, this difference, it would just take at least 3 hours to explain how it works. So I don't want to go there. But if those who know, then you understand that there are raw context and filter context formulas, and these can actually be very powerful if you understand the difference between them.
Okay. Next question is, when writing DAX, I find it hard to follow what columns or measures are used by what measures. So by changing or removing some column or measure later on, that I sometimes mess things up. Do you have any advice on how to better organize measures/columns, especially in advanced DAX?
Yeah, very good question. One way how you can do that is using the DAX Studio. They allow you to trace these dependencies, and you can also see how your measure moves through. Unfortunately, that's not available yet in Power BI. But what I have done, I have learned to write technical names properly. So for example, for me, it would be dynamic value step 1. Then you have the step 2, step 3, and then I would add, for example, those measures that are pertain to step 1. I would write step 1 and then my measure name. So I have created this dictionary for myself, how I can follow through all of these measures, and that can help. But to be honest, I think when I started using this feature of this switch selected value, I have dramatically reduced the number of formulas that I have. So usually I would have had as well like 100, 150 to 100 formulas. Now they're usually about 30 to 50. So then you can always manage 30 to 50 measures, and you can create whatever client needs. So within these, in the realm of 30 to 50 measures.
Wow. Okay. And the last question before we take a little coffee break, you are full-time working on with data analytics and you're consulting big businesses. You're the founder of a small data consulting agency, if I put it correctly. Yes. And once you're talking with, once you're taking on a new client who asks you, hey, Richard, we need your help to sort things out. With this advanced things that you show, do you have a requisite of what the organization and what skills do the employees need to have, or you adjust the level of difficulty? And have you had a case where you will pre-meeting a client, you interviewed them, and then you understand that they're not ready to talk to you yet?
I have had cases where I would say to them, for you, Excel is better in your situation. There have been cases where I've said, I mean, Power BI is nice, but what the capabilities that you have or the needs that you need is completely okay with Excel, especially then you will not need to teach your 40 plus or 50 plus employee to go to Power BI. But when people are already in Power BI, when companies are inside Power BI, I usually try to approach this idea that it's I try to teach them this golden standard that I call. Like I've used it in every single client, the standard, and it just does magic. And whatever features, whatever needs customer has, it can be just enticed in this logic of switch selected value. And when you teach to people, it's easy for the people to teach, and then they can actually use that later in there as well when they know I've left already this project, and then the companies are using that themselves.
All right, thank you.